In this video, we are going to look at a couple of methods for how you can get really fit in terms of climbing, but without having a climbing wall, so no access to a climbing wall, and also no access to a fingerboard. This might sound a little bit like, how's this even possible? How would you do this? But it's very, very definitely possible with a couple of tools. One being a lifting or pinch block, which I'm going to show you today, and then also a rope, pulley, carabiner, and weight setup. With this scenario, I don't want to kind of say that it's something that you would do only because you can't have access to a climbing wall or a fingerboard. It actually applies to a few other scenarios. One of them actually directly affected me recently. So there's two scenarios under which you would probably want to look at doing this, and they're not entirely obvious, but I think lots and lots of people find themselves in this situation weekly. Firstly is that you really are very, very limited on time, and you might want to spread your training in very, very small blocks all the way through the day. Secondly, this is going to work really well if you want to train at home with very, very few facilities, maybe at the office, in the park, or at a standard weightlifting gym. Right, let's have a look at some of the equipment that you're going to be using. First off is you want some kind of pinch or crimp lift block. Now I've got one of the Lattice ones here. You could use others, there's others on the market, but what's most important is that you have a variety of grip types, and also you have some attachment points so that you can add and lift those weights from the ground. Second off is that you want some way of attaching a rope, pulley, and weight setup to a fixed point. I've got a pull-up bar here, but you can also use an eyelet attached into the ceiling. You could use a tree branch. There's lots of different ways of doing it. One thing that I think is kind of interesting to point out in this particular setup is that I'm actually using a thicker rope and a carabiner here rather than a pulley. And I think this is a nice addition to this particular setup because it creates friction in it. And when you'll see when we're doing the exercises, when we let go or apply less pressure to the rope on this, it doesn't slam back down to the ground, and it's not really fast with no resistance. It's quite nice that there's some resistance. If we're looking to increase our levels of fitness for climbing, then we need to be operating in a certain level of intensity and volume. And the key with these exercises and these tools is that you're hitting the correct intensity and the correct volume. So whether it's any pull work and basic work we're going to do with a rope and pulley setup, or the lifting pinch block, then we really need to get that right from the outset so that we're going to get the physiological changes that we're aiming on this. So this particular session that I'm going to show you is very much around fitness. It's not a strength session. You may well see some strength adaptations depending on conditioning level, but this is very much a fitness session. Right, first exercise that I'm going to show you is going to be an aerobic power or power endurance exercise. So this one, we're looking to increase our power endurance performance on rock when we transfer this exercise over. So we're going to be getting pretty pumped. We're going to be operating at a mid intensity, so it's not low intensity aero cap style work. It's not high intensity anaerobic capacity or bouldering work. We're going to be very much targeting the forearm. So with that in mind, we need to target the intensity correct, but we also need to get the volume right. So we're going to be looking in this case in sets that are going to be lasting anywhere between 3, 4, and 5 minutes long on this. If we're going to be doing that, we need to make sure that the weight that we're adding to that block is also correct for it. So first off is choosing your grip position. I'm going to be going for a positive 20 mil 4-finger grip position on this. I want to find something that's really comfortable, not tweaky, is nice on the skin. Don't go for something which is highly dependent on friction. There's a chance of pinging off, or anything that's tweaky as well, because you're going to be doing lots of reps on this particular exercise. So really go for comfort on it. You could do exactly the same exercise on something with a pinch grip, a sloper, or a positive jug edge, depending on how well conditioned you are for climbing. Next is that I'm going to be using my weights to be able to add intensity to this exercise. On this one, I'm going to go for around 15% of body weight on this. This you'll want to adjust according to how well conditioned you are, and you're going to be looking for anything from around 10% to 25% of body weight on this exercise. You could also go for an RPE based system, so looking at how that kind of perceived rate of exertion is for that exercise, and we're looking for something around 7 out of 10 once we reach the end of those sets. So step one is I'm going to chalk up, and for this exercise I've got my forefinger really comfortable grip position, load up my lifting block, and I'm going to find a nice comfortable standing position. What's important about this is I set the shoulders back and I am comfortable in terms of my arms, my hips, my legs, and I'm going to be able to do a number of curls in this exercise. So these are finger curls where I'm going from open to closed, open to closed. Now I don't want to do this bent over. It's going to cause strain on my back. It won't, because it's very light, you might feel like you can get away with it, but I assure you, once you've done 50 of these reps, this is going to be quite painful, or not painful, but it's going to be quite uncomfortable on your back, and you're going to start to fatigue on your back. So really find a comfortable position to start with. When you first start this exercise, it does require a little bit of playing around. For wrist position, you want to find a nice neutral wrist position, not turned inwards like you're doing a wrist curl. And also you can have your hands turned inwards, more facing towards the center of your body, or you can have it rotated so that the palm is facing out. I think both of these work well for this particular exercise. Now, when we do this exercise, it's a very low intensity compared to your maximum, but as you'll notice, my hand is in a low position, so I'm not bringing it up to halfway up my body or above my head so I can shake out. So you do need to set that intensity quite low, because you're gonna find you're gonna get pretty darn pumped with this exercise. I'm aiming for 100 reps on this one. I'm going to be traveling all the way through from half crimp position through to close to an open drag position. I'm not dropping the pinky off on this one. And with this exercise is I'm just going to open and close, open and close. So you can see that I'm just traveling through the full range of movement with that finger curl. Feels really, really comfortable, not very high intensity. If I start to feel my fingers creep like they are a little bit now, I'll have a quick pick up, put them back on the edge, and then continue to curl. So it's not a problem to adjust a little bit on that hold. If you don't feel comfortable or you feel like you're creeping, totally okay to quickly pick it up, have a little adjustment, and continue. In a way, this is just like taking a hand off a hold and releasing it, shaking it out quickly, which we know works really well for any of that power endurance training. And as you complete all those reps, and you get through to your 100 reps, and hopefully you should feel pretty pumped by 100. Anyone else that I've tried this exercise with is invariably pumped by this time. And of course, you'll have to change that intensity so that it's correct to reach the right kind of pump level. Is you then want to swap over, move to the other hand, forefinger grip, going through from that half crimp to that open position, and again, opening and closing. A nice addition that I like to use on this is that if I'm using quite a heavy weight, or I'm at home or at the office and I don't want to slam the weights on the floor because they ping off on the hold, is I hold this top adjustment loop here and just keep that as a backup. It's quite a nice way to kind of make sure that you don't end up with a massive dent on your floor. It's also good that when you're doing that adjustment, just have a quickly pick up and then bring it in. Another great reason to have this top loop here as well that I've found is if the intensity was not quite right in your session, you kind of just misread it slightly, is you can give a little bit of assistance with that top finger in that loop, and you can get through to those ends of those projected sets. So if you're getting to 80 and you're totally burning out and you can't get to your 100, a little bit of assistance with that finger and you will get through to that 100. So that's what I've been doing for my power endurance or aerobic power exercises on these curls. Forefinger grip position. Sometimes I alternate with 3 fingers as well, but mainly 4 fingers. And I'm doing curls of 100 and then repeating that 5 times. So 5 times 100 curls and then 5 to 10 minutes rest between each of those. And quite often I'm actually blocking those out and spreading those out through the entire day. And I've been doing this for a number of months now, and the effects in terms of the endurance and power endurance that I feel on the wall are really, really good. I'm really impressed with this exercise, and I've been doing this really frequently, very, very consistently, and almost zero climbing in with it. And it's been very, very effective. Next up, I'm going to show you a aero cap or arcing exercise that you can do with a curl, pinch or crimp block. And this one I've been doing really frequently all the way through the week, and again spread out throughout the day as well. So tiny little blocks, but it's still been really effective in that manner. Now the intensity we had on here was well over 10% of body weight, so I'm going to adjust this now to under 10% of body weight. So it's really important to get the intensity really low on this one. And we'll get just a 5 kilo weight on this one. So 5 kilos on the end of my curls. It almost feels like nothing. You're thinking, how is this ever going to work? I mean, the intensity is just so low. But you want to combine that with a really good sized edge, nice low intensity. And with this one here, we can still repeat that same curl exercise where we do it that we were doing with the aerobic power exercise. But in this one, I've actually been adjusting in some stuff to also work with some of the familiarity with less familiar grip positions to me and things that have a little bit of weakness on. So on this one particular is that I really struggle to close and bring my hand in on full crimp. So in that position here is being able to close up this closer joint on my fist to create a 90-degree angle on here. I really struggle with this. I'm good open here in a half crimp, but as I close up, I really struggle. So I've been adding in to my low intensity aero cap work, just micro curls right at the top of the range. So the further joints along my finger are fixed in angle, but I'm just creating small changes in that joint there, closer to the top of my fist. So it's like tiny little micro curls. Again, super low intensity, really, really easy, but it builds up slowly over time, and I can easily do 100 reps of these with very little effort, but it's really translated back into normal fingerboard work where I felt a lot more comfortable in full crimp and likewise on the wall, even though it's been very, very low intensity. Again, swapping over, moving between those grip positions. So a little bit of full crimp on there, and then I can go into a full open and close half crimp. Now the pump level on this is very, very low. I've just got a light burn on it, and I could keep going beyond 100 if I wanted to, and that's the kind of intensity you want to look for. So lots and lots of volume, low intensity, and lots of reps. This one here, I might be completing anywhere between 500 and 1,000 reps on this one. And I've been doing this spread out through the day. I might do this whilst break from cooking dinner, whilst I've done a few emails in the office, or even when I'm doing some other strength and conditioning work. It's a really convenient, super accessible way to work on that endurance. It's also very, very skin friendly because you're not moving around on the hold. I've got, very soft skin today, and I could do this for hours and have no discomfort at all. But you get me on a normal climbing wall, moving around on jugs and edges that were really positive, and I'd be pretty sore probably within 15 to 30 minutes. Next part is we're going to now work on some much larger muscle groups, but specific to climbing. And when I was thinking about these protocols for how to, get fit without using a fingerboard or with a climbing wall, I really wanted to think about something where I could apply specific grip positions. So I was holding something that was like a climbing exercise. So we're going to be using our lifting block or our pinch block in this particular exercise. And then secondly is I wanted to work on some major muscle groups that I felt were really specific to climbing. So I'm going to show you 2 different types of exercises with a couple of variations. And these are also really, really effective in terms of building that fitness in a very, very simple setting, but without being on a climbing wall or on a fingerboard. So I've got my pinch crimp block here. And again, I'm going to go and do this one on a really positive, comfortable edge. I can exert quite a lot of force through this. If I put 40 kilos on here, I'm not going to be failing at this point. So you want to make sure this is not the failing point. The failing point or the difficulty and the intensity is going to be in the shoulder and the arms. You could likewise do exactly the same thing with the pinch grip as well. It'd be very easy to swap this around and do it in that manner as well. First off is I wanted to have some kind of pulling exercise that I was going to be doing in relatively high volume. So we're going to be looking at reps of 50 on this, so more of a fitness element. Be repeating those for 4, 5, 6 sets in total. So 4, 5, 6 times 50. And I want to make these specific to climbing movements. So for this one here, I'm going to do 2 different variations. One is going to be pulling from a shoulder height down to the hip. So I'm going to be internally rotating. So that would be similar to when I twist and roll on a climbing wall. And the other is I'm going to be working a lot more on the back of the shoulder, around the shoulder blade. And I'm going to be rotating and bringing that shoulder blade back. So it's much more similar to being into an open position. So first one, grab my good positive edge. Turn face front on. I like to bring 1 foot back a little bit, just so that I know that that's the hip that I'm pulling back to. You could go square on as well. It works just as well. And then from there I'm going to pull in and down to the hip. In and down to the hip. In, down to the hip. It's quite important that this position here feels really comfortable. Otherwise it feels weird on the wrist and it will become a limiting factor on the block. But really coming in, rotating down. One thing that you will find is if you have this set up here and it keeps dropping down to the ground, you won't have tension on your block the whole time. So you may need to step back a little bit more so that it doesn't come back down to the ground and you've got tension in that all the way through and it's staying consistent. And with this kind of intensity, I can easily complete 50 reps. It's not a problem. And so I can get that fitness work done in that manner rather than it being a strength exercise. So it's very different in terms of the volume that you're doing overall. Another variation I like to do on this is more of a row exercise. So working around the back of the shoulder. So on this one here I'm going to stay much more square on and I'm going to be bringing that shoulder, actually I'll show you on this other side so it's a little bit easier to see, I'm going to bring that shoulder back and bring it into a row position with that hand. So weight off the ground so that I've got pressure applied all the way through. Set the shoulder back so the shoulder isn't forward, it's back. And then from here, I'm going to bring it to row, back down, row, back down. And again, with this, you've got your crimp position, so specific to climbing. So really nice that it's not just a bar or a ring that you're pulling on. You could likewise do exactly the same thing with a pinch. And bring it into that row position. But make sure that shoulder stays back and you're really working on those muscles at the back of your shoulder. So that's your exercise 1, which is your kind of row external rotation versus internal rotation. And then the other is a press move, which again I think is really useful for steep roof climbing, mantles, face climbing. It just has so many different, even sort of transfers into front lever ability as well. So there's lots of different applications on this one. And this one you want to get again, I think this one is a little bit easier if you go a touch lighter on weight compared to your rows and your internal pulls. And you're going to be using, it's a little bit harder with a pinch grip. So I like to use a 4-finger grip position here. And from here we're going to be pulling from around shoulder height in front of us, arm extended out, and you want to keep your arms straight on this one, so similar to how you would on the front lever, and you're going to bring that down to your waist. Down to your waist. And again, on this one, in terms of a fitness element, I'll be working in reps of 50s on this. And you will want a nice positive edge on this. If you go for something slopey, you'll just ping off the edge that you're using. You'll really feel on this one that lats, triceps, and core are worked on this. It's quite nice if you happen to have a really long fingerboard and you can do the same kind of setup and you have this with 2 hands on that fingerboard and you can bring that in with really heavy weights in this manner. You really feel the core. It's almost like doing a front lever position but on the ground. A nice extra conditioning exercise to work in with that. With all of these exercises, don't forget that it's all about getting the intensity and the volume right. If you go too high on the intensity, you're not going to hit that fitness element. And if you go too low on the volume, again, you're unlikely to hit that fitness element. So these exercises I've showed you today are very much towards working that power endurance, aerobic capacity, aerobic power, any of that kind of window, which should then transfer across into the route climbing a lot better. And All these exercises that I've showed you today, I've been using for 3 or 4 months now, training a lot in the office and at home without access to a climbing wall. I've almost exclusively used this exercise over a fingerboard as well. I'm really convinced that these are very, very good tools for anybody to use.